Now on to our big question. Do traditional cycling clubs still have a place in 2024? We have a very extensive list of good things and some bad things and just some discussion points on this.
Yeah, we were going to do this as an overrated, underrated one week, weren't we? And then we talked about it so much that we thought it could be a bigger piece.
Yeah. So an obvious one for the good things about cycling clubs is they are a great place to meet new people, especially if you live in rural places or in super, super populated places where, like London's a great example. We lived in London. Well, we lived in a particular flat in London for the last 2 years or whatever it was that we lived there. And we spoke to our neighbours a couple of times a month. And, you know, like you basically don't meet people. So clubs are a great way to do it. One of our good friends, Nick Harnett, one of his best mates is because he decided to join a cycling club, Islington CC, and then made mates, which are now his life friends. So it is a great place to meet new people. They are always regular. So I'm a very good example of someone which finds it hard to get out of the door unless I have some kind of motivation, which is why I like Parkrun for running. It's there every Saturday. Cycling clubs are great for, they're always going to be riding whatever day of the week plus whatever day of the weekend, and you're probably going to be riding with the same people or similar people, and they're always going to be there. And, you know, it's a good way of having that reliability and regularity, which I think is good. You guys got anything else to add? Or is this just
we were
me?
just listening. We were just listening to your TED Talk. Yeah, I guess also if you're new to cycling, they're particularly good because you meet people and you learn about cycling and culture and all of that. I mean, hopefully not the bad parts of that, because there is, you know, like the rules and all of that kind of stuff, but the good stuff, you know, etiquette and just the sort of language people use and the sort of rituals people do. And yeah, and also I guess they don't usually cost that much as far as I can see. It's usually like something like 30 quid a year.
I think it gets expensive if you want to race.
Yes.
But to just join a club,
yeah,
it's not that expensive.
It's not golf memberships.
No.
Yeah. But then is there an expectation that you buy the club kit and then perhaps it does get expensive?
Maybe, yeah. I don't know how enforced they are, but I can see if everyone else is buying it, you wouldn't want to be left out, would you?
Two massive positives for cycling clubs. Traditionally, they would teach good riding etiquette. Inherently, riding bikes is dangerous. And there are certain things that you can do whilst you're out riding to limit the risk. An easy one, which I always bang on about, is if you're riding next to someone, if you're riding shoulder to shoulder, if you get hit by a crosswind or something or other, you're just going to bounce off their shoulder rather than into their handlebars and you both hit the deck. So clubs typically will teach safe riding etiquette. But also on the subject of racing and grassroots racing, which we've talked about quite a bit this episode, that, at least in this country, that basically exists because of cycling clubs. It'll be cycling clubs that are hosting the junior races or the senior races, the cyclocross races. It's all hosted by the clubs. It isn't British Cycling that are hosting most of, if not any of the, you know, it's the clubs that are doing that. And it's those events which are essentially bringing through athletes, whether they're professional or not. So without those clubs, a lot of that stuff does not happen and just wouldn't happen.
It's also good for finding new routes in your local area if you don't know which, because all the different clubs will ride different places and different routes, and just you can learn more about where you're riding.
So it sounds like the answer to our question is yes, they're great. No, because we thought of some things that they maybe don't do so well. And obviously, I think really it's on a club to club basis, isn't it? Some clubs are great, some clubs are not so good.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case.
I think committee structure can be a really good thing, but I think it can also, the rigidity of that organised fun can sometimes cause issues.
So I guess by committee structure, you mean because it's an official affiliated club, it will have some kind of structure with someone which is in charge, and
there's a hierarchy,
which can make a club less flexible, perhaps.
Yeah, totally. And I think the vibe of that club can really be made or broken by that committee. And obviously that committee will usually change as well. And that can really make a sudden shift in the experience, I would say.
Yeah,
so
fair.
it's a bit, I mean, maybe it's a bit like dating. You have to find your right one. Not every club is going to be the right fit for you.
Definitely.
And therefore you have to shop around.
Some clubs are known for being unbelievably elitist, which isn't a bad thing as long as you know that. Some people want that. Some people want elitist clubs because that fits them.
So, yeah, I'm not good for this because I think different clubs...
Because you are Mr. Elitist.
No, because I rule my club with an iron fist. You know what I mean? Like dictatorship properly, like there's no committee. I don't think it's always bad. I think it's difficult. The real difficult thing is if you've got a massive club, it's really good to have all-inclusive and cater for everybody. So our club back home in South Africa, we used to do between 4 and 5 ride-outs on a Saturday in different categories. So essentially the front guys, like they just called the A group, they used to ride as hard as they can, as fast as they can. And there was a few professional cyclists that used to show up and it was just fast. And then obviously it gets slower as it goes in different distances. If you've got a really small club, I don't think you can cater for everybody because we've noticed with our club where we've got less than 40 members, but the majority ride at roughly a pace of between 16 and 19 miles an hour average speed. So if you then all of a sudden throw somebody in that's new to cycling and can only ride 12 miles an hour, which is perfectly fine, or somebody like James that wants to ride at 28 miles an hour, it's just going to cause a massive problem because then you have to make the majority of the club change their ride for the minority. And that because you can't make 2 or 3 groups because if you've got 3 groups and there's only like 6 people that showed up, and then you've got people riding on in pairs.
Yeah.
So I think smaller clubs, some of the clubs do need to start off with finding an identity of what they want to do. Those clubs can eventually grow. Muckle's a really good example up here. They started small, I think 5 guys started something, and then eventually now the club's got over 100 members. So it had to more from them just doing absolutely monstrously long rides to doing a few different things like chain gangs and stuff like that. But yeah, so you can't, being an elitist club, I don't know, elitist is the wrong word, but like a club that caters for a certain, if you've got a club where you've got 5 or 6 guys that just want to wear fancy clothes, buy expensive bikes and just ride to the local cafe, have a drink and ride back, well, so be it. If you had 200 members and you're letting everybody come in, then you might want to change it up slightly.
I actually agree with you in the sense that I don't think that there's anything wrong with establishing an identity which is we can't possibly cater for all people, whether that's because you're new or you don't have the capabilities or whatever. I think the problem is when you don't signpost that enough up front. Just be upfront about it. If if you don't have the proper structure in place to do a shorter lower speed ride, whatever it is, then just say that. But I think in this day and age, sometimes clubs feel pressured to say on their website, we cater for all abilities, all genders, all minorities, and then you go there and you get something completely unexpected. If you're not going to do it, don't say you're going to do it, because then someone can make the decision to not turn up there. Because as much as I was saying before, it's really good for beginners to be part of something. You can also be really put off if you turn up. Like I remember speaking to her last ages ago. This is when I was still in London, and she just messaged me on Instagram, but she was talking about a local club in South London, and she said she turned up and they were literally just doing hill reps up and down, and she was like, I've not even done a hill on my bike. Like it was that kind of level. It was such a disconnect, but she was told to turn up, they would cater for her, blah blah blah, and then they just, in her mind, left her. There was no support, and it was so disconnected from what she'd been sold. And I think that's probably the problem with it, isn't it?
It goes back both ways. When I first moved to the UK and I was racing back in the day, I mean, I just left, I was fast. And I went onto a local club ride and I showed up, and they didn't advertise that it was going to be a 12 mile an hour average, which is perfectly fine. But for me, it was just, I showed up, I committed to it, I started on the ride, and I didn't want to be like, well, this is just not what I was at that point in my life looking for. Now to be perfect for me. But back then, I just wanted to go and ride incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And get my legs torn off. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess in the past there was no other option other than to join your local club, whereas because of the internet, people can connect with people, and probably people that they're better suited to, rather than we live in the same geographical area and we both ride bikes, that we might still be completely different cyclists. Whereas in theory, the internet lets you connect with more like-minded people if you can find the right place.
That is how I ended up meeting so many people that are still my friends now.
Yeah.
Like Chris Hall's a prime example of it. He was one of the first people I met, and it was the collective concept, which was in the previous early wave of cycling. So that's post 2012 wave. And then the rise of social media. Once you hit kind of 2014, 2015, it was when like stuff got cool. E-commerce became a thing. Stuff became more accessible. The internet was blowing up, and like cycling scenes were developing. And I'm very fortunate that I was on the London cycling scene when it was happening. And I ended up falling in line with people like Chris Hall, Toby from Cold Dark North, because he used to spend a lot of time in London. And there was this crew of us of maybe 15, 20 of us. One of the lads had an Instagram account which kind of like pulled it all together. It was, it was 10,000 kilometers CC. And it was Richard Fraser's vision of aim for consistent. It was all about consistency. His thing wasn't about performance, it was just about consistency. If you're consistent every week, then riding 10,000 kilometers in a year is achievable, which is, for the record, a huge distance, and most people are not able to achieve it. But that's by the by. And we ultimately just used to ride a lot together as a collective. But we were essentially a cycling club.
What you could argue is that's exactly what Nick's talking about. That is a club that sets out very specifically their purpose and what you can expect from doing it. If you like these things, then this is for you. Rather than we're a traditional club, everyone welcome.
But fundamentally, it really was a club.
Yeah.
Because we used to meet on most days of the week, but not all days of the week. We would ride, we'd go for coffee, we'd go to work. On a weekend, we would meet up and do a longer ride.
Yeah.
But this is where British Cycling's coming in. You now as a club have to pay to be part of what they do.
But you don't need to be part of it.
That's
You're not
what I
racing,
mean. Exactly.
You
Yes,
don't need
that's
to.
what,
It's redundant.
so we're doing this with the bike shop at the moment. We're going to do Saturday ride out, gravel. This is for gravel. But anybody's welcome. We're going to set out what we want to do, the kind of idea. And if you don't like it, well, hopefully you do. But if you don't, you can just go your own pace. We're going to put the route out and you just ride.
Well, I actively do not go on your rides because they're never actual gravel rides.
Same.
Are you telling me that you're actually doing proper gravel rides now, or are you still doing your stupid mountain biking stuff?
It's not.
He likes to fling people down very muddy hills and
don't,
stuff.
because you can walk down if you want. Gravel's a weird term. I don't think anybody knows. It's just, that's what we like to do. Most of the guys I ride with enjoy doing it. And that's why we do it.
My question is, are your inclusive gravel rides actually mountain bike rides like your usual rides?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I'm still not to be going on them. We do know some amazing clubs. I know if Francis was here, he would be shouting about Kingston Wheelers. So that's the club that he was a junior with. They are huge. They're in London. They ride around Richmond Park a lot and Surrey. We know plenty of people that, excuse me, have and do ride for them. They're an amazing club. So I'll shout about them on his behalf.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually had a look on their website when I was trying to look at what the sort of cost of joining a cycling club was, because in my mind it was hundreds of pounds, but it's only £30 a year. But one of the things I saw, so when you come up on their homepage, you see an FAQ section, and it said, one of the FAQs was how many women are in the club, and it said there's something like 50. You're more than welcome. We also have a dedicated women's officer, and we have a policy of inclusivity and and that, I would say, is something that would make me go to that club.
Yeah.
Just mentioning that.
Well, it would actually make me want to go to that club more as a male.
Yeah.
Because for me, I look, if they're treating people like that, then the likelihood is they're not going to be horrible to me either.
Yeah, and I mean, this is it. It's all well and good saying it, but if you're going to say it, you have to be prepared to deal with incidents if they do occur and deal with them in the appropriate way. And I'm not going to name names, but I do know there are clubs that say that, and then something actually happens and it is not dealt with appropriately. So that's not Kingston Wheelers, but you know, having a dedicated women's officer, for example, would be something that would make me, if there was any sort of incidents, I would feel like I could go to them and it would be addressed properly in a way that it made me feel like I could be comfortable in that club. Obviously, there are other minorities as well that definitely are going to feel out of place in what's predominantly a very like white male environment. So I think, again, don't offer it if you're not prepared to do it, and fine. But if you are prepared to do it, then I think that is something that is very worthy of having a club. Another version is Velociposse. These are all London-based because this is kind of when we were looking for clubs, wasn't it? Velociposse are predominantly for women, trans and non-binary, focused around racing and sort of track, but not just. They do a lot of skills sessions and just ride sessions and just more bike proficiency. They're
super cool as well. I think they were originally like a fixed crit kind of like racy team setup sort of thing. Not just about racing, but they were very present in that space, and then they grew and grew and grew.
Yeah, and I was part of them for a while, and it was absolutely great. And I've met a lot of people there that I rode with afterwards as well. Kind of, I guess there aren't a lot of women on bikes, so that was kind of a place that everyone congregated. So it helped me meet other people like that.
Yeah.
This sounds horrible, but it shouldn't be needed. Like, I mean, so when I was a kid riding, so our club back home, Select Cycling Club, had about 450 members. And there's loads of different categories. So it was the race side, the social side, there was juniors, and then those women. And every year, the club voted on captains. So you got your race captain, your road captain, your ladies captain, and your junior captain. And then you go on the rides, and that person had full authority. So if somebody on a ride was misbehaving or doing something wrong, they would just get booted.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to have like just somebody that's got a bit of they get voted in, but somebody that's essentially there just to say, so there could be one girl with 30 guys, and if one of the guys is just behaving, somebody just go over and say, listen, do one. It shouldn't be that it's like...
In an ideal world, that would happen, totally.
But like I said, this has been happening for 20 plus years. It should be more of a common thing in clubs. That's probably the first thing they should vote in. Just so there's somebody that's there as a kind of, your job is to make sure people... So if you ride too fast or you do something silly, it's just, or if somebody gets dropped, somebody that's aware that there's a new cyclist on the beginner's ride, and they're struggling to back. So that person is just going to drop back with them and kind of make sure they're okay. So just a bit of common sense.
Maybe that's what's lacking from some clubs then, common sense. Yeah. Tell us about your experiences with cycling clubs. If you love your club and you think they're doing great stuff, shout about them in the comments, send us an email, whatever you want to do, but tell us about them. We might even give them a little shout out one day. Maybe we can pile a list of the best clubs in the world.
That would be great. You know how there's that Glassdoor thing for
business,
employees, and you can kind of give them a rating and stuff. If there was something like that,
there should be.
That would be sick.
Yeah,
we should.
Should we start that?
That would be awesome. I don't know if I have the skills to be able to create that, but that would be really cool based on actual. They say this. What do they actually offer?
Yeah.
And it updates per year as committees change and all of that kind of thing.
So good.
Accountability.